Hello and welcome to Out of State DMing. I'm your host, lluksblackheart. Today, we'll be discussing our recap and future episodes, discussing Dungeons and Dragons 3.5. The past 10 or so episodes we've been discussing about the various classes of Dungeons and Dragons. So we'll be doing a slight recap over some of the stuff we've talked about. For instance, barbarians. We love you. You're not. You don't have to be the stupid. I I break everything. While at the same time, remember that clerics are your friends, not your enemies, and you do have a built-in self-destruct with your rage. So please be nice to your clerics so they heal you. Bards, you're more than just a love machine. You're great support, and you have the potential to be great combatants. Don't forget that you're more than just what people assume you're going to be doing. Clerics, you don't have to be the party healer. There's a lot of buff spells and or combat abilities you can dive into. So please remember that you're not just around for healies. You're more than that. Druids can make great backup healers, but also remember that you're not just a tree hugging hippie. You have abilities to be more than that, both combat and utility wise. Fighters, you don't just have to focus on melee, you can go range too. Like we discussed, you're versatile in just combat shenanigans. Just remember that you can do those combat shenanigans. You don't have to always resort to having to solely focus on one end. You can do all sorts of wild things like that. Monks, they are an interesting bunch. If you're a big fan of kung fu movies, go for it. But remember, you're more than just a I punch everything. You can use some of the weapons with it, and you can make a really great upline fighter. Paladins, I'll remember to discuss with your DM about your Paladin's code. Remember that as long as the DM lets you get away with it, the deities that you or the deity you worship can be used as a certain loophole in some circumstances, depending on the DM and how far he'll let you bend certain things. And also remember, if you don't know about the crime, the party can't get punished for the crime if you don't know about the crime. That and the stickler of you have to obey the laws of the land you are in. Ignorance saves you to a certain degree, but just remember that phrase, laws of the land you are in. Just different lands have different laws, and if you're in an area that's considered lawless, well, there's no laws for you to follow, so therefore there's no laws for you to break. Haha, loophole. Rangers, uh, you don't have to be a ranger to be a ranged combatant. So if you're going ranger because of their archery combat style, I'd rather you just go fighter, because rangers, they have access to spells, they which are similar to druid. They have several druidic based powers, so they're good at both combat melee or ranged, while also being good at just dealing with creatures. Because again, they're like the cross between a fighter and a druid. Yeah, fighter and a druid. Rogues, you can take a more combat active role if you want, because there is certain things you can do to become a little bit more tankier. But the key thing is trying to get yourself into flanking without getting yourself surrounded, because flanking does allow you to get your sneak attack in, so you can have fun going, I actually get a sneak attack things because you're flanking them. But it also requires you to have a decent AC and a decent health pool. So high dex and con still helps you no matter what. Sorcerers and wizards, both these are you. You are squishy. So it does not matter if you have a spell that can, like, all you have to do is touch them and melt their face. Keywords, you have to touch them. As a last resort, go for it. If the monster gets up in your face, smack them with it. Do not go running head on into combat and get yourself surrounded, because you're a squishy mage. You don't have the hit points to support that. While you're a sorcerer or a wizard, you do not have the health. And a lot of the things that give really high AC, you can't really use. So, don't risk it. Keep distance unless you absolutely have to. Uh, Also remember that there is spells and stuff things you can take, so that way, yeah, you can cast Fireball, but you don't have to worry about, killing the entire party when you do. Because nothing is more of a joy kill than we're fighting the monster and everyone dies from a fireball because the mage decided to fireball. Also remember that multi-classing can be fun, it can be interesting, it can be a way to expand what the character can do, what their abilities are. But also remember that there's key ways to maintain that without getting the XP penalty. There's the pay attention to your race's favorite class, because that helps you out a lot, and also by keeping everything even, as in no more than one level between any different class you can take. So there is ways to avoid the XP penalty. Not to mention the fact that talk about your DM about multi-classing. Make sure he's aware that you actually are multi-classing, and verify any and all rules with him, so that way he doesn't immediately penalize you because of some archaic rule he's following, or because he got mad at that you're cross-classing. There's a big thing in no matter what you're doing as a character, while you're multi-classing or not, trying to be C's class or not, trying to go for a particular thing. The easiest way to get a character to have something bad happen to it is lack of communication with your DM. That means when you're leveling up, you don't have I'm not saying like copy your character sheet and hand it to him so he has a copy. What I'm saying is, if you're taking a feat, make sure he knows you're taking the feat. Make sure he has a general gist of where your skill points are. Make sure he knows what equipment you're going for. Make sure he just has some idea of what's where on your character sheet, so that way he doesn't have to stop in the middle of combat or stop in an important spot, grab your character sheet and go over the fine-tooth pin because you said something that caught his ear. There's a DM who's aware of what your character has, means he's aware of what your character can and cannot do, which helps him help you. Because that's a big thing to remember, is the lack of communication between the DM and the players means a lack of basic understanding on what can and cannot happen during the game session. Because if the DM is under the impression that the party can slay this bad guy, and then the party gets wiped, it's because he didn't know what his characters could or could not actually do. Or the party did something to make him want to kill you. So no matter what class you pick, no matter what race you pick, be careful not to mess things up. Verify that what you're trying to do matches up with what class and stuff you're picking, because one of the biggest mistakes is wanting to do spellcasting but not understanding it. So go with an easy spellcasting class like a ranger or a paladin or a bard, because that's more complicated than a ranger paladin, but not quite the same as the rest because again they only go to 6th level. Uh, if you're new to the game, simple classes work best until you get a grasp of what's going on, because spellcasting classes may not be good for taking damage or anything because again they're spellcasters, but at the same time, spell shenanigans is the biggest thing that can slow game session down, especially when you have multiple people trying to do different things. It can really get on the nerves. That and proper dialogue between the DM and the players means the DM not only has an idea of what's going on with the players, but the players get a general gist of what's going on in the campaign simply because they're communicating with their DM. Because they're listening to what he or she has to say, they're taking the DM's advice on what direction to go for certain things, so that way they feel when certain challenges show up that they're actually prepared for it. That they don't have to feel bummed down because apparently they didn't have the right weapon or skills in the right spots or whatever it is to actually complete whatever hurdle they come across. I'm not going to lie, one of the biggest things to stop or even slow down a campaign's progression is a DM saying, hey, you guys might want to invest in climb and possibly jump. And then the only person who does this goes, well, I'm the only person with as a class skill, so I'm the only one that's putting stuff in it. While everyone else goes, it's not a class skill, I'm not doing it. And then 3 hours later, it's like, wow, just if you guys would have actually had stuff in jump, you could have made this. But in order for you guys to make this, I now have to finagle the DC, which is mainly the distance and stuff, to make it so that way everyone can make it, because no one decided to put stuff into jump, or I have to add circumstance modifiers to decrease the DC so you guys can actually properly make the climb checks because no one put stuff into climb. Because I'm not gonna lie, there's been multiple campaigns that, as both a DM and a player, where the DM, through simply suggesting certain things, pretty much point out that, there's going to be a point where people need to be able to climb, people need to be able to swim, people need to be able to jump. And very few people actually put stuff towards that because I don't get as good as bonuses with it, so I'm not going to put anything to it. And then the DM either has to scrap entire sections of the campaign because a majority of the party cannot go forward with it, or they have to somehow, without making it too obvious, drastically lower DCs for things, while still making it seem like a challenge, but obviously still easily beatable. And again, I've experienced that both as a player and a DM, because I've been doing this for over 20 years now. Another thing is, if it sounds like a stupid question, doesn't mean it's a stupid question. Just be prepared for a stupid answer. There's really no such thing as a wrong answer. Maybe a wrong time or place to ask it, but never really an actual wrong question to ask. But a big thing is, if you don't ask the question, you don't get the answer. Therefore, you go with your gut and you hope you're right. When I say there's been multiple campaigns where certain things had to be scrapped or altered to a huge degree simply because the party never asked the question of why is this sewer so important? Why is the DM now finding random reasons for us to go in the sewer? Why is it particularly this part of the sewer? Why when we're in certain areas he asks the elf or the dwarf to make just random search checks, even though they're not actively searching? Because if you don't ask particular questions, you're not going to get the answers, and you can end up sitting there just blundering through things until the DM either A, scraps it, or B, makes it so painfully obvious a blind person can find it. So it's one of those, if you look back and realize that, hey, if an elf comes within like 5 feet of a hidden door passageway, they get an automatic check at the DM's discretion, meaning the DM can either tell them or DM rolls it for themselves to see if they find it or not. And dwarves, to a certain degree, get the same thing. It's just the little things that make you look back and go, oh, I should have pointed that out. I should have asked that question. For DMs out there, don't be too strict or too lenient, because there are players out there that will see your strictness and walk away, and then there's other ones that will see your lenience and then step all right up over you. Well, besides that slight rambling, that pretty much covers what we've discussed with classes. What we're going to be getting to future episodes, the next hurdle that we're going to get over is we're going to start talking about skills. We're going to focus on what attribute goes to what skill, common DCs for the skill, while it's something you actually have to have points in or not, because there it's just saying it's trained or trained only. Synergy bonuses. Can a skill be used more than once? How often can it be used more than once, if it can be used more than once? And someone explaining some of how some skills are literally, the name says it. It literally says it, while other ones are a wee bit more complicated. Because there are some skills that take some explaining, because simply just saying, oh, bluff, it helps you lie. Okay, yeah, that's what it's used for in a nutshell. But there are certain things to bluff that augment while you get that augment it either positively or negatively. So you can get a boost or a minus. And a lot of people forget that. Tumble has weird stuff. Climb, swim. Those are, like I said, those two are self-explanatory, but there are certain things that, some nuances with it that can alter whether or not you want to actually try to do it or not. Real complicated ones like craft. That craft can be extremely complicated. But I'll be hitting each skill one at a time. Not necessarily like an entire episode per skill, just we're going to try and fit several skills into each episode. But I will be going over how a skill works, in alphabetical order, of course. At any particular point, a skill that you know of isn't in an episode. It either means that A, it's a third-party skill, because those exist, or B, it's one of the expanded skills from one of the other books. So I'll remind you that we are going over the basics. And if I cover any other additional books, like for instance, like you can see right here to my left, the Draconomicon, which is the Book of Dragons, that book has its own things to be added to it, how certain skills can be expanded and stuff like that. So if I cover that book, well, you'll know, because you'll see it right here on Out of State DMing. On that note, for this relatively short episode, I'll end it here, because there's really not much more to talk about. This, again, recap in future episodes. So, thank you for watching, and remember to like and subscribe.